from MUFON. How you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me on the podcast.
Thank you for being on.
No problem. Glad to help. So my name is Mike Panicello. I'm the state director of MUFON, Connecticut. I've been involved with ufology for almost 20 years. I've investigated hundreds of cases in Connecticut. I've been a field investigator since 2012 and the state director of Connecticut since 2013.
Excellent.
So that's a little bit about who I am.
Okay. And, if you have a website, let them know. We'll get traffic to it.
So our website is mufonct.com. So it's mufonct.com.
All right. So in a nutshell, Mike, and I try to do this a lot. I've only got involved with this recently. It was one of those things I liked as a kid, and in my teens, I lost sight of it. And due to COVID, when you have downtime, you watch things you find appealing or interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The relationship has rekindled. And now with this, with the videos from the military, with the jets and locking these things in our atmosphere, for me, it's undeniable at this point. Something is there. What it is, not sure.
Right.
From your perspective, from the research you've done, what do you believe is flying around and out there? What are they seeing exactly? What are these objects?
So that's a great question. And I guess the best way I can answer it is the way I answer it with everyone. I get this question a lot, and they say, what's in the night sky? Is it all UFOs? And what I tell them is that, 90% of what's in our skies is man-made. It's aircraft, like commercial aircraft, private aircraft, helicopters, blimps, all those weird kind of experimental planes that people build in their basements. I mean, it's all man-made stuff. It includes sky lanterns, which are like Chinese lanterns. They're used to be known, but now they're known as sky lanterns.
And drones too. We can factor in. Yeah, drones are.
Yeah.
I've been fooled by some drones in the last couple of years here. In all honesty,
drones are tricky.
Yeah,
drones are really tricky to investigate because they have a lot of characteristics. So when I go on with my answer about answering your question of what's in the night sky, drones have so many characteristics that are similar to what the UFOs have, and it's very, very tricky to figure out which is which. And I think that is something that ufologists or investigators are going to have to really figure out some kind of protocols to determine what are the criteria that make IFOs and then thus a drone, and what is it? Because what the old criteria was that, that's a UFO, it makes unusual moves, it stops, it starts, it turns left, it bangs right real fast, it bangs left real fast. All of that used to be considered a UFO, but now, at least characteristics of a UFO, but now the quadcopters can do this. These drones can do these. And so it's almost you can say, it's the altitude. Because originally, if you remember, quadcopters used to be very low in the ground. Remember, you could buy them at Radio Shack or, Best Buy. They can only go a few hundred feet in the sky. And they can only go a few hundred feet away from the person controlling it because they needed access to the radio frequency. Now, with these commercial grade drones, you can go hundreds of feet in the air, thousands of feet in the air, and you can go for miles on its own. So it's very, very tricky. But to get back to your question of, what's in our skies, of that 90%, 10% is left. 5% of that is classified military aircraft. And there's plenty of cases out there that shows that these craft have been confused as UFOs, such as the U-2 spy plane, the F-117, the B-2 stealth bomber. All of these classified aircraft, once they were declassified and people looked at where the sightings of these UFOs were, where they were testing these craft, it makes sense. They're one and the same. So that really leaves 5% that's unknown. And, we don't know what those are, but there's something. There's too much evidence out there that says they're not of this world, the way that you just can't ignore it.
Yeah, it's indisputable at this point, especially with the military. And again, it's a really appealing subject for me, all right? But when you see the military videos, for me, that was you can't argue that. There's no disputing it. So, and I like what you said about the technology advancing with the drones, because again, I've been fooled by some drones. And I live in Florida and by the beach, and when people there, that I didn't notice it recently, but there's groups of people that do synchronized drone work, and it caught me off guard once, and there was that moment of like, oh my God, I saw something. And then there's one other time, and I just said this in a previous podcast. It was a storm. I saw a blue orb in the sky, but it didn't move. It just faded into the clouds, and so I'm left to wonder. I personally have never witnessed anything at all. And part of this podcast, whether it be afterlife or ghosts or UFOs, I'm desperate to see something. And eventually I'm going to start touring. I bought a camera for this and doing a documentary. But like you said about the military and I agree with that. There's a lot to our militaries, and they should. I don't think the military should. In other words, I don't think we should have open arms at Area 51 and let us see what's in there, because we need to have something that our adversaries don't know about. And we're not very good at keeping secrets as a society, right? So.
No, I agree with you. I mean, there is a need for secrecy. But I guess the true believers would say, like, they got to find the balance. But I do agree with you that some military secrets you do have to keep.
I mean, another big question for you is how well received would advanced extraterrestrial life be by world religion or, society as its whole? A big problem we have is we don't get along with one another. Our species doesn't coexist well. And I can't, and I'm not excusing that for the government if they did know more than what they know to not tell anyone anything, but we should really work on mending our relationships before trying to extend a hand to another one.
All right. No, I agree with you. Well, so how would people respond? Well, the government did a study in the early 50s by the Rand Corporation looking at what would happen if extraterrestrial contact was made public. And what the report said is there'd be a social breakdown of a magnitude unheard of. Religions would go crazy, the stock market would crash, people would panic. It'd be very much like that radio prank that they did in the 1930s. Remember War of the Worlds?
Yeah.
Everyone got crazy over that until they finally had to come out and say, no, we were just pranking you.
I thought that was fake, by the way. I didn't realize that really happened.
I think it did.
Yeah, when I read about that, that shocked me.
Yeah. But that report was what the government used for many, many years as justification for keeping UFOs secret, for not really disclosing it. And I think that has changed in the perception of the public. In the early 40s, late 40s, when Roswell happened, we just got out of World War II. The military was number one. They won the greatest war of their generation. They were on top of their game. Everyone believed the military. So when they said, "Oh, there's nothing there, it's a weather balloon," or if you saw something, keep your mouth shut, don't talk about it, people did that. They weren't going to question the military. There's a lot. But now, as time goes on, you're starting to see the polls are changing. Like, the majority of Americans now, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but the majority of Americans now do believe we are not alone in the universe. Academia is starting to now take it seriously. You have the guy from Harvard who's out there. He started his own foundation to look for UFOs. Hollywood has definitely brought ufology and aliens into the mainstream, which has helped change perception of we aren't alone, that these are creatures out there. So I don't think that if we were to have contact today, we would have that big of a problem with the public reacting. I don't think they'd probably think, oh, well, we already knew that. The other thing is with religions. The Catholic Church came out a few years ago and said, well, it's okay to believe in aliens as long as you believe they come from God. For the church to say that would be huge, and the Catholic Church has a lot of followers. So, even religions are starting to change. And to get back to the Catholics, they do a lot of research. They own a telescope out in Arizona. So even religions, I guess what I'm trying to say, to repeat myself, is coming around to the notion that there is more in this universe than just us. And so I don't think it would be as traumatic and a social breakdown as the government originally thought it would be. And then the question is, well, why don't they let it come out?
Yeah, I get
That's
it.
the $1 million question.
That is the $1 million question. So I have a theory I want to bounce off you.
Sure.
And this is done in, again, I have really no long-term experience in any of this other than I was fascinated by it. And I've listened to some podcasts and I've watched some documentaries and I came to a conclusion. As far as the gray alien goes, this is just a theory, by the way. I think they're an advanced robot and or an AI system with a consciousness uploaded from the extraterrestrial. I say that because in some of the things I've read, for biological life to travel the vastness of space, and I heard this on Lex Friedman, it would take 10,000 generations to accomplish this with a ship that's large enough to have the resources to take care of 10,000 generations plus. So in my theory, the Greys they're a robot and or some sort of advanced robotic system with the consciousness uploaded, which makes them, immortal in a sense. Because I know we're on the route to that. We have companies in our country right now looking to map the brain to up and load and download consciousness. And, the majority of the reports that revolve around these gray aliens, you can't distinct them from one another. They're identical, which if you made something in a factory line, sounds like it would be, in and around the theory I have. Not that my theory is the strongest theory out there. It's just the one I have. How much of that have you heard in your experience?
Well, for traveling through space for tens of thousands of years, that's assuming that there's sublight. I think a lot of people believe now, a lot of ufologists believe that they have faster light travel. So it doesn't take them generations to travel to us. It might take them months or weeks or maybe years, but not generations. But I have heard that these grays are biologically created. They're like test tube babies, for lack of a better word. They were grown in a test tube. They were programmed to do a specific task, and one thing they always say is these grays do not have a soul. They're not human, in that they can't have empathy or compassion, which is why so many abductions, when the abductees are brought back and they go under hypnosis or regression, they talk about the clinical nature of these grays. They're robotic. They do their task. If their task is to draw blood, they draw blood. They don't have like a bedside manner, as like if you would go to get your blood drawn at any kind of place here on Earth, that you have a very nice person that talk to you, they'll walk you through it if you were nervous. So they're very robotic, they're very clinical. And so yes, I do believe that you are correct, that they are created. They're not biologically made in the traditional sense. They're grown in a lab, and they're built for a specific purpose. And only the aliens that control them know what that purpose is.
Yeah, I like that. The idea of it either being an advanced robotic system that would appear biological or I never really considered them being made for that purpose. That's a really good perspective. Again, another thing that gave me the idea I have about them being non-biological or, an advanced robot is if you listen to Bob Lazar's description of the inside of the craft he was inside of, he described it as being featureless with no buttons, knobs. Its seats were very small, almost, which, no fighter jet has a bathroom in it, right? So
right.
The idea, though, is that it has to be controlled either telepathically or their form of Bluetooth or something in that nature. In your in any of your studies, have you heard how they believe they are manipulating the craft?
Telepathically. Most of the abduction reports I've read have the beings controlling it with their mind. They're not the traditional sense of a fighter jet where you sit in a cockpit, you have all the controls around you and you work it. This is, you control the craft by your mind. And a majority, almost every one of the cases I've ever read about an abduction, when the person has been in the control room, it has had very few features in the way of buttons and knobs and other kind of control apparatus that you would need in a traditional plane. So it does lead to
Yeah.
the fact that it's probably your mind. And I think the other thing is that's interesting you brought up is that what Bob Lazar was describing of the cold and almost sterile conditions of the craft. That's not great for a humanoid, but if you're a robot or a biologically created entity that just kind of goes dormant, or
Right.
it's
Right.
perfect for.
Because you and I would not be pleased with that if they offered that up to us, right?
I don't think so. I need to put a lazy boy in it.
As we start to progress with our technology, as we get more advanced, I was reading about Elon Musk and this Neuralink, and when you factor in Bluetooth controlling and Neuralink and the ability to utilize Neuralink Bluetooth and you can control things in your house, it makes telepathy seem more feasible because what we think to be telepathy could be advanced technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I keep I circle back to this idea that it's Bluetooth operated and everything they do is the way they communicate is via Bluetooth. Because in what I've read and what you said earlier, that rings a bell with me. The Greys are, again, which gave me the robotic idea, but what your idea, again, same, is that no emotions on their face, no expressions. Very, very plain state of being. They're there to do a job. It makes sense.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and Bluetooth, like you were saying with Elon Musk, he wants to put something on your brain, like a little device on your brain that would interact with the computer. They could have that built into them as well. You don't need to have like a little earpiece on your ear like we have with our iBuds or
Right.
whatever those AirBuds I think they're called.
Yeah, I mean if they're created, they just they install it. Yeah, so that makes
absolutely.
sense. The other thing too, and I've been hearing this. Not that I'm upset by it, but I'm hearing it a lot. We're getting compared to ants, is why they don't communicate with us. And I made room for another theory, and I'm gonna use the ants as part of the theory. If you or I were walking through Central Park, very large park, and we saw ants driving combustion engine cars and flying, planes, and then throwing bombs at each other, we would shut that park down and study that for forever to watch the evolution and how it unfolds. Like, how far are they going to go? That would be something we would watch, and we would want to minimize our presence while we watch it so we can see the organic way they would unfold in their evolution. I'm starting to believe where these crafts are, the abductions, because if you think of what an abduction is, they're studying us, right? And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I hear less and less about abductions as time goes on. I think they got their selected people, and I think they have an idea what their the biology is, and I think we're under a long-term study. We might be being observed long time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that. There is a lot of ufologists out there that will suggest the same thing that you are saying, that we are like a lab experiment. If you look at abductions, a case in point, the one thing you do in a lab experiment, if you have rats, let's just use them, and you're doing a long-term study, one of the great things about rats is that they have multiple generations very quickly. So if you're doing a study, you can track the progression over a long period of time, in actually a very short period of time. Well, a lot of abductions happen within families and over generations. So do you see the parallel between how we do studies in biology, in genetics, and pharmaceuticals, with the same way that we use rats, but they use us, but it's over a generation. It's we have a longer time span, but it's the same concept. You're taking the same little focus group and you're looking at them in a long period of time. And absolutely about how they're watching us. I can't really think of an example that would say that they would be interested in communicating with us, because why would they? You're absolutely right. We don't have anything to offer them now. The best example I can always think of is when people ask me that, I say, it's like Star Trek and the Prime Directive. Until we get warp drive, they're not going to give us the time of day.
Right.
So until we evolve to a point where we can not, for lack of a better way, start a war with everyone in space, because we are, like you're saying, we're very violent people. We're killing each other on this planet left and right. Why would they want to be involved with us?
Right.
Until we get to that higher technological level where we are more mature, you're right. I don't think they are going to give us the time of day. I think they'll watch us, but they're not going to want to interact with us.
I agree. And I say because let's think about if we go to Mars and we set up shop on Mars. I promise that, well, if Elon's heading this up, he's not going to view this. In other words, people that are going to fill out paperwork to go to Mars and start that society, they're not going to base it on their race, their religion. They're not going to base it on their political ideology. None of that's going to matter. What can you contribute to the foundation and building of that new world? That's all they're going to care about. You know, the brilliant minds, and obviously culture will have to follow, right? But he's definitely not going to. Race cannot exist when we're interplanetary. We can't look at it that way. We have to be a species, one together. And if these things are watching us, if they are studying, if the way we would study, like the ants that we found that are using cars, and we saw that, we're definitely in that for the long haul. We want to see where they go long term because we can, right? And if these beings are creating grays, whether they be robotic or bio or made in however they make them, again, they're essentially immortal and could watch indefinitely. They don't have a timeline, They could watch for as long as they please, and we're not even sure what it is they're wanting to learn from us exactly.
Mm-hmm. That's true. We don't. There's a lot of theories out there, but we don't really know for sure.
Right. I mean, we're not the most complex life on the planet, right? If you look at some of the things that live down by the vents under the ocean, the extremophiles, it's crazy. Dolphins are really smart. I think if I'm not, maybe
Ants
I'm wrong.
Are very good.
Yeah.
Ants are very smart. Very efficient little creatures.
I tell people all the time, their colony operates flawlessly. And there's a misconception of the queen. She's not a queen. She's there to provide generations and futures, right? She doesn't dictate to anyone. They keep her captive. But they operate very well, and there's no distinction from one another from difference. So that's why they're successful, and that not that they're going to evolve intelligently, but they'll be around pretty much as long as the planet is, and we don't destroy it. But dolphins, what stops dolphins from becoming more advanced? I think it has something to do with their appendages. No hands. They can't escape their environment because they'd have to build something. I made room for the idea of there is life out there. Is it possible it's a water planet that, like the dolphin, they can't escape their environment? Or they might be in their bronze and or Stone Age, wherever they are, And maybe what's watching us also watches them, and we're part of a greater study.
Well, I think you have to remember how old the universe is. Our planet is like 14 billion years old or something like that.
Yeah.
8 billion years old. We're made from stars. Our elements come from supernovas. So there's already been stars that have lived and died before we were even here, which means that there were planets that lived and died, which means there could have been civilizations that lived and died.
Right.
And those civilizations could have even left their own solar system. Eventually we're going to have to leave ours, because when our sun becomes a red giant, it's going to take away Earth. That's hundreds of thousands of years from now, and hopefully we'll evolve by then if we don't kill each other.
Well, yeah, we definitely got to make room for it, because we're going to consider our species. It's time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's just the vastness of space and the age of the universe. There's just no possible way. And then, like what you were saying about the creatures in the vents, a couple before they had robotic equipment to go down to visit these vents, they didn't think that they, being the scientists, the oceanographers, didn't think anything could live that far down. It was dark. The pressure was way too high, and there was no source of food. They only associated with it with the upper crust of the ocean, where the light hit it and created the algae, which eventually was the basis of the food chain. And then they go down there and they see, oh my God, there's a whole ecosystem. There's a whole thriving world down there. And we're at that point too. We don't think anything can evolve in the universe, but it is. I mean, look at Europa over by Jupiter. It has an ocean. They know that it has thermal activity. Well, that mimics what we have here. So maybe they're not a civilization with, like you were saying, advanced, but maybe they're a Bronze Age civilization. Maybe they're just a bunch of fish swimming around up there,
Yeah.
which still would be amazing.
It would be, if we ever found out, that'd be, again, if you or I got on a ship and we found a planet with people in their Roman era and war and culture and building, we would want to not disturb that. We would want to pay attention and just watch. We would want to study.
Well, we'd hope that we would. I mean, human history, that's another thing. Human history has a history of conquest.
Yeah.
Conquest. I mean,
That's why we
ask the
said
Native
scientists.
Americans and, ask some of the other civilizations that we've destroyed in the name of colonialism.
Right.
We just have to be careful we don't do that again when we go to another planet.
Well, that's why we need more Elons and like-minded people like yourself. That's who should be heading those ships looking for these places. Not, you don't want the people that have and this is a sad fact. What would stop us from studying another planet is if we found out the resources were very valuable. We could not let the general world know that, because the corporate people and the big wig, company they're going to go there and they're going to drill, and they don't care what life's there, right? I mean, that's a reality. Like, we already know. I think they said something like they found trace elements on the moon that might speak to silver beneath it or something like that. Before you know it, we'll be drilling. It's a matter of
And then
time.
what does that say about, what does that say about humanity?
It
That
sucks.
we're going to go to the moon and we're going to strip mine it. And it's a beautiful orbital body right now. I mean, you look at pictures of it, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And you've seen what the strip mines look on our planet. I mean, look how we've polluted the space around our own planet. I mean, you got junk flying around there. You got bolts and screws, not to mention all the expended parts of a spacecraft. I mean, we just bring junk everywhere we go.
And that's in an environment where a grain of sand could be dangerous,
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
That being said, and in a future podcast, I've already invited the person, why do we drill? What it's what the shiny stuff, gold, silver, and shiny. And in the future, I'll let you know when this podcast comes out, because I'm going to ask this guy, why is this valuable? Because you can't, in a post-apocalyptic world, you can't eat it, right?
Right.
But back to the study of us. We're really not certain what they're studying, why they're studying. We really don't know. And I've had some interesting conversations with people speaking to their theory on aliens being interdimensional. And I misunderstood that as being a different universe. I didn't understand they meant by sometimes you could go into a dimension and it would shorten the path you're traveling to by exiting that dimension.
Yeah, like a wormhole.
Yeah. So in your investigations, how strong is that theory?
So in the cases that we've done in Connecticut, we haven't had any evidence to show that craft have been interdimensional. Like, they'll be there 1 minute and then gone the next minute. We have had some cases that a craft would move, like some kind of UFO object would be stationary in the sky for X amount of time, and then it will take off. Like, for example, there was one in 1980 where a craft was over like the Litchfield County area of our state. It was there. It went up on a 40-degree angle, and then it just took off. Now, you could argue that it took off and went so fast that you just didn't see it anymore, or it took off and went into an interdimensional portal. But there's no evidence for that, because you didn't see like a portal open. You didn't see a portal open and close with objects coming in and out of it. It just up and moved. So it's more like it just left so fast your human eye couldn't process that it was gone. It just was there and it was gone.
That makes sense.
That's one possibility. I'm sure a physicist on here would be like, nah, that's probably a portal for all these.
Well, here's the good news. Physicists or no physicists, we don't know. Science is still a guessing game until we know to certainty. And even when we know something to a certainty, we're always proven wrong somewhere later on as technology advances. Right?
True.
So
absolutely.
we're never going to be totally certain of anything, right? Because that's the one. There's few things that are certain. It's certain that we're going to pass away one day, right?
Wow.
It's certain that the sun goes up, goes down. But as far as science, nothing's dead set until something new proves otherwise.
That's a very good point. I like that saying. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't have any evidence in Connecticut a portal exists to move these craft back and forth. On a side note, with Bigfoot, I know a lot of people that are investigating Bigfoot sightings, and they'd say like they will be following a set of Bigfoot tracks, and then it will just stop and disappear. So maybe the Bigfoot walked through a portal and disappeared in a portal to wherever the Bigfoot actually lives.
I would hope, because that subject, out of everything I'm going to be doing on here, is the one I'm having the hardest time. I'm eventually going to get someone who specializes in researching that, because I'm having the hardest time wrapping my head around Bigfoot, only because, I've referenced it a few times, but I think it was either 2013 or 2014, I watched this documentary, and they were trying to find if there was some squirrel still around, or a chipmunk, either a squirrel or chipmunk. And after months, they found this thing with IR video and IR drones. And I was thinking, and I remember watching it, like, how do we not find this huge ape? And this chipmunk was discovered after months with a drone. And the drone initially caught wind of it, and then the ground team found it. And a little tiny creature. So there's portals. And again, I can't say whether it's not true or not. I have no idea. I have no clue. Again, everything I think I do know for certain, like I said earlier, is going to be unproven soon. Especially the more I do these podcasts, especially I'm eventually going to be about doing a documentary. And in these podcasts, I'm pretty much asking, give me pointers where to go, the paranormals, because if I'm going to put the time and energy to go out there and look, I want to go to the spot. Because again, this is about satisfying a curiosity from childhood, so much as it is about a scientific outcome.
All right. No, you're right. I think this is a great opportunity for you to learn and get the word out there. So, more power to you. Good luck to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I look forward to seeing how it develops.
Yeah, I'm a pretty persistent person as you get to know me. I'm obviously going to reference you more in the future. I'm going to try to limit how many people I go back to and bounce things off of. And I encountered you right away, so I definitely knew I wanted you after reading your credentials. For the documentary and what I'm going to do moving forward, I definitely don't want to sponsor, right? Because I don't want to be curated, and I'm not saying History Channel's a bad channel. I really enjoy it, but I definitely don't want to add suspense where there's no suspense needed. You know what I mean? I want it to be very organic, and what I find if it's 2 hours of boring nonsense with me staring at things, so be it. I'll make it.
I think
one way or the
what
other.
Makes the worst about ufology is those stations.
Yeah, I mean, it's already an interesting subject. And listen, I get the idea of making it greater for TV. But when you hear someone like David Fravor speak, I find that more appealing. Talking to you, I find that more appealing because you're getting a direct source of information. And you're not seeing. I hate when I watch any show. Forget just UFOs. Any show, and they get to that part where you think you're going to discover the outcome, and then next week. I hate that because next week can't come fast enough for my curiosity. So
it's the one nice thing about on demand. That's why I tape everything.
Yeah.
Because I'm exactly like you. I don't want to wait, so I'll tape the whole series and then watch it straight through.
Yeah, I'm purposely not watching the Netflix series with SpaceX and Elon because I just want to know. I don't have the patience to wait.
I understand.
In your research, what is the most interesting case you've come across so far?
I had an abduction case. As we keep talking about abductions, but it's by far the most interesting case I ever had. It was a case in the Fairfield County area, and the witness was 100% credible, and the nicest person you'll ever meet. I mean, the witness was a very nice person, very sincere, very kind, honest. But it was just so weird in that the physical evidence of the case, for example, the bedroom door to the witness's bedroom was like forced open. And with abductions, you don't really have an alien kicking down the door. You mostly have the alien will like beam you up, for lack of a better way. They'll levitate you, and you'll either go through the ceiling, through the roof, like you'll dematerialize and go through it, or you go through a wall of the bedroom out to like the backyard, and then go up into the ship. You don't have like breaking and entering with an alien. The witness heard a hissing sound right before they passed out after seeing the alien, but the alien they saw matched a gray being. The traditional, little mouth, the like almond black eyes, the gray skin, all of that was traditional. The witness saw a blue fog, often reported with abduction sightings. The hissing sound really didn't make a lot of sense. The bedroom window was slightly open, and the screen was pulled back a little bit. So we kind of thought, well, maybe someone put a gas tube in there and gassed the person. And that would be like the hissing sound. Like, you go to the dentist and you get the laughing gas and you hear that before you,
right, yeah,
you kind of pass out. So it was this weird case. And, we did everything we could. We left video equipment there for a week. It had night vision. We put it on its own DVR. We had it on its own battery. It was fine. It was separate from the house. When we collected the material a week later, the hard drive was completely fried. The equipment worked fine, like the cameras worked fine. We changed out the hard drive. And then the DVR machine worked fine again. The battery kept the charge. It was fine. The witness said that they never touched the object. So we had the hard drive examined. The conclusion by the engineer was that it looked like someone took a high-powered magnet and messed around with it. But I know that we talked to the witness constantly. We were in communication with the witness. The story never changed. It was exactly as what was said the first time. So it was weird. Like, there was a lot of characteristics that were traditional with an abduction. The paralysis, seeing the gray alien, describing the alien perfect. The height of the alien was right. The blue mist.
So
the missing time.
This is all consistent with people that would honestly not know one another. Is that right?
Yeah, they don't know each other. We didn't know the witness, if that's what you mean. The witness didn't know us. But abductees, when they talk, they all tell the same stories, but for the most part, they don't know each other. You're taking this information from witness statements all over the country, all over the world.
When I hear about the blue mist and the hissing sound and them going through the walls, the first thing I think about is you're manipulating the matter of that wall, right? You're doing something to you're manipulating the physics surrounding that person. Mm-hmm. And I know very little, but I remember watching a show that had to do about weapons, and we were talking about being able to breach complexes with something near around that. Maybe not to that degree, but the concept was there. And in that video, when they were trying to heat the wall internally, like a fog was around it. It was like grayish, but that's our technology now. Who knows what's superior? I mean, it's much more advanced than what they're doing currently, right? Like, what they're doing seems to be like something we're stumbling onto now. Same with Bluetooth, right? That's the whole idea of it being telepathy. We got Bluetooth in the 2000s, and for them, that's telepathy. It's natural. So all what we've been describing for years is technology we're finally catching up to.
Well, I don't know if you've heard of that Ben Rich, the head of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, but there was a very famous quote that went around that he said at a conference, and it was, we have the technology to take ET home. And I'm paraphrasing.
Oh, I do remember that, actually. I did read that.
So the point is in the classified world, we might already be traveling amongst the stars. Elon Musk might be great with his chemical rockets, but this could be like horse and buggy technology in the classified world. We're already zooming around the universe.
It's true, because when I first laid eyes on the FA-22 Raptor, and I thought that was the cutting edge technology. Turned out we were working on that since late '80s. It's already been in the works pretty much, right? They had the competition, and definitely in the mid '90s for between it and a YF, and like you said earlier, the stealth program has been around since the '50s probably, because we had the Blackbird that we were flying for. And I think, I'm not sure, don't quote me on this, but I feel like they found the stealth ability of the SR-71 by accident, because it was flying and it had such a small signature, and that's when they realized what direction it could go in.
So I don't know much about the SR-71. What I do know is that they did try and make it stealthy. So the design and the way it was built was to try and minimize its profile.
Right.
But they might have come across that other stuff. But I know that they stuck the thing on posts, and they were shooting radar at it to try and get it to have a smaller signature.
All right, so here's another question I get. I've written these down. And these are questions I'm getting from just people I know, and other people I've emailed from the website. Are there more races of aliens that we know of? Like, are there different kinds? Or that we suspect anyway?
Well, that you can prove, or that people talk of. So there's the thing about ufology is there's like two types of people. There's the ones that have the evidence, and then there are ones that they just tell you stuff, and you're like, well, what's your sourcing for that? If you listen to those, there's thousands of aliens out there. There's thousands of species, and they all interact with us. If you look at the ones that have the evidence to it, meaning that it comes down to stories that people have either experienced these beings in person, like a close encounter, or if they have abductions and they describe it. And that is not just like one or two people, but like thousands of people telling the very similar story of what these creatures look like. Then you kind of have like, well, you have a preponderance of evidence that this might be an actual creature. And if you look at those people, you have the little grays, the tall grays, the insectoids, which are like praying mantis looking, like the praying mantis with the little head and the eyes. The Nordics that are like Nordic looking people, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Oh, tall, yeah. I've
very, very pretty. They're always supposed to be like,
I kind of feel like that's wishful thinking. When you hear about those descriptions, like, in all honesty, that's like Swiss supermodels. So
yeah, exactly. Or like, like Thor from Norway or something.
Yeah,
like, okay,
right.
But if you take that one step further back to us, there are some very beautiful people that are humans. I mean, maybe they had a little nip and tuck here and there. I don't know, but there are some very natural, beautiful people, and they're rare, but they are out there. And so it's possible that they modified their genetics to be a little more stimulating to the eyes. I don't know.
Right.
But and then the other one is the reptilians. They look like giant lizards. They're usually the ones that are like the nasty ones that are not so nice. But then you get into like the different things there, like the reptilians can shapeshift into the Nordics. So I don't, that gets into the other stuff. But those are the main ones that I know of. And like when I talk about, like if I do a lecture, or if I do like some kind of class, those are the ones I talk about, because those are the ones that only come out for evidence that I have, that they have so many people that have either seen them, interacted with them, or been abducted by them, which is the first two, interacted and seen them, that these people don't know each other, and yet their stories all match similar. So then the question is, well, how does that happen unless they actually see something that looks like this being?
Right. Some might say because it's all over TV, radio, and they know exactly what to say, or they could manipulate what they're going to say based on that. But there's small details in some of the studies I've read that is not shared worldwide. There's some, like, even little things like what you mentioned earlier about the blue fog. I've read that in a few studies, and I've never seen it anywhere on TV ever, or any podcast for that matter. I read that a couple months ago, in fact, something about a mist coming into the room and the way they described it. So yeah. Look, when people are reporting things in mass, we're responsible. thing for us to do is investigate, because we're humans, and we're ultimately we should be looking out for the well-being of one another. We're not here to I don't judge I don't cast doubt. I don't judge anyone. I'm neutral in everything I do. And the 3 PNRs, 3 perspectives neutral research, myself, your perspective, and the audience perspective. And I respect all. I have, because again, I don't know enough of anything in this. I'm really fascinated by it. I'm getting into it. And clearly, and with your blessing, I'd like to have you on again in the future. We'll talk about specific cases.
Yeah, I'd be happy to come back anytime.
So
just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. Before one last thing before we cut this one. What is the for you from MUFON? What is MUFON's their point of view on gray aliens?
Pretty much what we have been saying, that they're probably some kind of biologically created entity, that they are extraterrestrial in origin. They're not terrestrial, meaning like we didn't make them, and that they are part of this whole abduction UFO phenomenon. Like they are an integral part. You can't have UFOs and abductions without talking about the grays, because they almost go one and the same sometimes.
Right.
Almost all the time. So.
And I'm sure, like with MUFON as being a field investigator or otherwise, they have a protocol they run, right, when it comes to investigating these?
Yes. So we try to be as scientific as possible. We want the evidence to lead. And I can speak mostly for Connecticut, but the protocol is the same for everywhere. You get a case, you get assigned a field investigator. There's a form that they fill out that we use as like a checklist. And then we look for the evidence, whether it's physical evidence, trace evidence, witness statements. We look at we look for the police reports. If they had a report of someone's called and say, "Oh my God, there's a craft. It's over my house," and it happens to be at the same time you're reporting the sighting to us. That's kind of compelling. You got someone else reporting it to the police. So we do our due diligence. We do our research. We listen to your story. We're not going to judge you. We don't judge. We just let the evidence speak for itself. So if you tell us your story, you won't be ridiculed. You'll be respected, and we will do our best to try and bring you an answer. The one thing I should stress is that a lot of times people contact us to try to stop an abduction. We don't have the ability to, we can't control the aliens. We can investigate it. So
you're talking about a technology that we can't rival currently.
Right, exactly. So, we can investigate it. We can do our due diligence to give you some kind of answer, but sometimes I'm not going to give you the closure you want. So, there's limitations to what we can do. So
Mike, if anyone listens to this and they want to speak to you about, a case or an incident in their life, how would they contact you?
Our email is probably the easiest, mufonct@gmail.com. Okay. Or they can go to our website, mufonct.com, and there's a contact us button, and that will go to me too. Both of those will go to me, and I can reach out to them.
I'll link that in the podcast so people could see it.
Great.
One final thing. What is your forecast moving forward? In other words, let's not talk over the years. In the next year, do you feel like we're going to learn anything new?
I don't think we're going to learn anything new from the government. If you look at mainstream media right now, when that report came out from the Director of Intelligence in June, everything leading up to that, it was the UFOs were all over the internet. It was all over the mainstream media, on television. It was all over the internet, on newspapers and blogs and whatnot. The report comes out. It was 9 pages. It was absolutely nothing. The media got their answer, and if you notice, it hasn't been really in the media since. Yeah. It has just kind of died out.
It was smart.
And I think,
It was smart. Listen, Jets saw what they saw. We captured in video. They spoke exactly that. They stayed within the narrative, and they didn't touch anything else. So,
yeah, and that stopped. And so the answer to your question is, I don't think we're going to get anything major from the media. I don't think we're going to get anything from the government unless somehow, though, another video surfaces. And if you, even with that, it wasn't just the first video, the Tic Tac videos. It was like all those additional videos that came out
Right.
and so unless there's more videos released, any kind of answer we get at this point is going to have to come from the private sector, whether it's the guy, the professor at Harvard who does something because he's been in the news a little bit, if it's a private UFO researcher who stumbles upon something, but it's going to come from the private sector if we get anything new. It's not going to come from
the Harvard guy. Was it Avi Loeb? Is that the guy?
Yes.
Yeah, I literally
couldn't think of it.
Yeah, I want to reach out to him and speak to him because I feel like everyone that interviewed him kind of danced around everything other than what he thinks, what he believes, what is his perspective. He didn't get to comfortably speak his theory, right? I really would like to get him on to let him speak his theory. But anyhow, moving forward.
That'd be great. I would love to hear that. I think it would be a great interview.
Yeah. I mean, you see, as I am, I just want people to speak. I have my theories. I'm not 1,000% behind anything because I'm one of these people. I got to be able to touch it. You know what I mean? The old me would say, well, in the cage or dead on the table. But now I make room for more because, again, now we're talking about things that we can't understand, we can't perceive, and it's probably more advanced than us. So I make room for a lot. I really do.
Yeah. No, I think you got a great perspective. I think you got a good direction that you're going in. So keep following that, and you should be fine.
I appreciate it.
Get the answers you get will be what you're looking for.
Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure. I enjoyed speaking with you thoroughly. I'd like to have you on again.
Thanks. Absolutely. Anytime. Just let me know.
All right, my friend. Have a good night, and thank you again.
Thanks. You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.